actually not sure if what I'm about to say is going to be relevant, because it seems from the show of hands that Bastian did that everyone's a crypto expert, and everyone is also an AI expert. So at least what I was planning to share is a very high-level overview of what decentralized AI is about, hopefully without any buzzwords. And I tried to design it such that a general technical audience would understand it, so no AI knowledge is required, nor crypto knowledge is required. So as Bastian mentioned, my name is Stan. I have been part of the Definity Foundation for about 5 years. The Definity Foundation develops a blockchain protocol called the Internet Computer Protocol. I was one of the early developers of the protocol, and over the past year, I've transitioned into working on some of the AI efforts of the foundation. But this talk is going to be much more general and not specific to this one project. Okay. So I want to begin actually with an analogy. Linux in the world of operating systems. So as you all know, Linux is the dominant operating system when it comes to servers. And I think it is an amazing example, actually, of decentralization. You have a ton of contributors from many different companies, many of which are competitors. So you have Google and Meta, you have Intel, you have NVIDIA, you have American companies, you have Chinese companies, you have Korean companies. They're all contributing together to build something that is completely free, completely open source, and you can use it without any licensing restrictions whatsoever. And yet, I would argue that all of these players that are collaborating together, even though they're adversarial in some scenarios to each other, they are all winning. And we are all winning because Linux exists. We all now have the luxury of deploying infrastructure and not have to worry about paying licensing fees to an operating system. And we don't have to worry about a proprietary operating system or the provider of that operating system holding us hostage for the service that they offer. So it is a true example of decentralization. And I bring this up because I think it is actually a good analogy to think of AI as an operating system that many people are now building apps on top of. And I think just like there is Linux in the operating system world, we need to have a Linux equivalent for AI, something that we can all build on without having to worry about paying licensing fees and without having to worry about being held hostage by a proprietary provider. And I assume the first question that's going to come to your mind is, don't we already have open source models like Llama and DeepSeek? Yes, we do, and I think these are all amazing steps in the right direction, but I don't think it's quite the same for a number of reasons. The first reason is that the data sets of these models, the weights are public, but the data sets themselves, they are private, which means you cannot really reproduce these models yourself, even if you have the infrastructure. And you can also not necessarily tell the biases that are baked into the models. There are some obvious ones. So for example, if I go to Llama and I ask it if Taiwan is a country, it's going to give me the Western American view that it's a complicated situation. And I asked the same thing to DeepSeek, the Chinese open source one, and as you can probably expect, it was very opinionated on the subject. So there are lots of, I think these artifacts are really growing to become cultural artifacts, and they're very nuanced, and that's why a lot of countries are caring very much about trying to build these things themselves. But instead of trying to replicate, having every country trying to replicate all of this infrastructure, I think we can all benefit from the collaboration, just like we have in the Linux world, to build something that is truly open from the get-go, including the data sets. So I'm going to go on this journey together of trying to explore what it would take to build this open Linux equivalent for AI and some of the projects that are actively working in that space. So let's start with the data sets. I assume you all know Hugging Face. I think they've been hosting better and better data sets over the past few years. There are also a number of blockchain projects that are working on crowdsourcing data sets, giving incentives for people to work together and to scrape data from various sources. Maybe one example that I'll quickly highlight. I won't be able to get too deep because I only have 10 minutes and I'll go through a few projects. But BitTensor, for example, part of their offering is a data scraping and storage service. So I actually just went today to try it out for the sake of this talk. But you can go on one of the services that BitTensor offers, and you can create what they call a data collection task. So here I asked to collect some data around US tariffs. And then they have miners. So this is a decentralized network of miners. And these miners, they specialize for now into fetching data from various social networks. In this case, it's Reddit and Twitter. They do plan to generalize this to the entire web. But I made this request, and then I checked in about an hour later, and you can see that a few miners have shared some data from different subreddits, different channels and hashtags on X. So that's one example of crypto letting people work together in order to scrape data for whatever commercial purpose. And the miners, in this case, they get paid in the Tau token for the effort that they're putting into the data scraping. So that's one example. There's also the Ocean protocol that's been looking into this. And a lot of the data scraping that they do end up publishing it on Hugging Face as well for other people's use. Then we have the training, and there are also a few players in that space. One that I would like to highlight today is Prime Intellect. So just a few weeks ago, Prime Intellect, they finished training a 32 billion parameter LLM completely on decentralized infrastructure. So I believe the people that contributed the infrastructure were volunteers from different parts of the world. And they are working on a lot of challenges, such that how can you train with heterogeneous hardware in geographically disparate areas. And I've tried out their model. It's actually quite good. And I believe they do plan to introduce a token at some point to give incentive for people to give their compute in order to train larger and larger models. But this is already a huge step, in my opinion, in having fully decentralized, fully open source LLMs. There's also Jensen, funded by A16Z and others that are working on similar experiments as well. So that's as far as building models, and that's arguably the most important step. But let's take it a step further in this spirit of openness. So where do you run the models? And there you have a few options. So you can run it on your own infrastructure, of course, and manage that yourself. You can run it on a proprietary cloud, as most people would do. You can also run it on an open cloud, and this is where something like the Internet Computer Protocol comes in. So you can think of the Internet Computer as this sovereign cloud for hosting software services, including AI agents. And when you deploy a service on the Internet Computer, it doesn't actually get deployed to one place. It gets deployed to anywhere between 13 to 34 different subnets around the world. And so there you get the reliability, because if some of these data centers go down, your service will continue to be operational. You get the security, because if some of them get hacked, your service will continue to be operational. And you get the sovereignty, because if whatever happens, wars, sanctions, whatever the case that might be, your service will continue to be operational because it's present in more than one. So that is one example. There are also others that are working on hosting agents, like the Agentverse by Fetch AI. And then I think probably one of the hottest topics that are being explored is this future of agents collaborating with each other. So this is a quote that I heard Sam Altman say a few weeks ago in the AISM conference. He said, "I hope that there's a new protocol on the level of HTTP for the future of the internet, where agents communicate with authentication, payment, data transfer built in, and that everybody trusts." And I think a lot of different players are looking at what this protocol looks like. We've of course had Google. They launched the agent-to-agent protocol. I think this was in April. We've also had Nanda from MIT that have been also trying to create a standard for that. In the crypto world, there's been a lot of focus around agent-to-agent payments. So we had Near AI, I believe in February, when they launched the AITP protocol, and others. There's also, again, Agentverse from Fetch AI for discovery, and then X402 to handle payments from Coinbase. I know there's a lot of names that I had mentioned, and I didn't have the time to get too deep into them, but I wanted to keep within the reasonable timeline. But maybe the key takeaways that I have for you from this is that we do need, in my opinion, the equivalent of Linux for AI, something that's truly open end-to-end. And you'll notice that in all of these projects that are in this decentralized AI space, maybe the common theme is that they're all about fostering trustless collaboration. We've seen that trustless collaboration in the context of data collection, like in BitTensor. We've seen it in training, like in Prime Intellect. We've seen it in hosting agents, like in the Internet Computer. And we're seeing it again in a lot of the new protocols that are coming up in terms of the agent-to-agent communication. And so with that, I will end this. Thank you very much.